But ultimately, when you kind of stop fighting the universe and start listening to where your opportunities come from, that's how maybe a business is born.
I think this is what most e-commerce businesses get wrong, is they assume there's only one successful way for someone to use their platform.
I also love waging war on the word fail. It's all just data.
The founders that we see are most successful, the thing that I like to think about is they marry the problem, but they date the solution.
Well, how do you A/B test when you have no traffic, when you're a startup?
Assume you know nothing. Assume that every turn is trying to kill your business and kill your dream.
Before we dive in, heads up, this one's a little different. We're doubling up today with 2 guests instead of 1.
It's like a battle royale, and honestly, this might be one of our most relatable episodes yet. We usually talk to people running websites with millions of visitors a month, but today, we're talking about startups, small businesses, and what to do when you have, 12,000 people visiting your site versus 12 million.
We're joined by Justin Abrams and Michael Rispoli, the co-founders of Cause of a Kind, a web and software studio that helps the little guy punch above their weight. They've worked with giants like Marriott, L'Oreal, and Home Depot, but now they focus on helping startups win.
If you think A/B testing is the answer to everything, they'll set you straight. You can't just A/B test when you have really no traffic and you're trying to look like a steak when you have a fast food budget. That's friction you're creating for yourself.
They introduced this concept of brilliant basics, which basically means stop trying to innovate and just play the greatest hits. Use Shopify templates. Use Webflow. Don't build a custom e-commerce solution like you are a billion-dollar brand when you're not.
They don't talk about failure, they talk about data collection. They've been friends since they were 15. They've tried to build software for decades. They failed at multiple businesses, punch card apps, auctioning experiences, even t-shirts, before finally building an agency because people kept asking them to do what they're actually good at.
Mike says something I love. Features are friction. Startups think they need 10 features to launch, but features confuse your story, your marketing, and your elevator pitch. Do one thing well first.
They also call out vibe coding, how AI tools like Replit are actually bringing them more business, not less. Founders build a prototype, realize they can't finish it or secure it, and then come to the pros.
And they get into why small businesses need to measure different things than enterprise businesses. You're not tracking conversion funnels when you have 5 users. You're watching screen recordings, talking to individual people, and manually shepherding them through your product.
If you've ever felt like our enterprise level conversations don't apply to your reality, this episode is for you. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Frictionless Experience, the podcast where we lay waste to digital friction. I'm Chuck Moxley.
And I'm Nick Paladino.
And joining us today are Justin Abrams and Michael Rispoli, the co-founders of Cause of a Kind. Guys, welcome.
Thanks, fellas. It's a pleasure to be here. It's nice to see you both again after coming out of our podcast, Strictly from Nowhere. And we'll try to punch above our weight, as you said luxuriously before. I might have to steal that.
You've worked with some big brands, but I want to talk about let's start with what was the catalyst for starting Cause of a Kind and focusing on smaller businesses?
Mike and I have a saying, we talk about it on our show all the time. We talk about the opportunity to follow opportunity instead of your passions. And so there's a long story about how Cause of a Kind was created. It was a whole bunch of failed exercises. I'll let Mike maybe give some color around that story. But ultimately, when you kind of stop fighting the universe and start listening to where your opportunities come from, that's how maybe a business is born. And so we're kind of a quintessential story. Mike and I have been trying to build software for almost a decade at this point together. Some businesses we tried to build just independently as like a startup. That's what we come from in our careers. And when you fail as fast as we do, it's part of our ethos. You just take a lot of swings at all sorts of different things. And so I'll expedite the original story. Mike can fill in a little bit of color about how we actually got to the agency. But ultimately, our network woke up and started asking us to do what our core competencies are professionally for them. And boom, your agency freelancer service is born. And we have stayed within that ethos for the last 8 years. And this business has afforded us the opportunity to leave our full-time careers behind and become full-time entrepreneurs. And now we have a staff and, do a whole bunch of work a year and try to build a whole bunch of different things, from web experiences to software to applications to you kind of name it. But the story is really darling. I'll let Mike take us a little bit about through our past and where Mike and I met and kind of how we ended up building an agency instead of a product.
You hit it right. That our initial goal was really to build a software product. It wasn't really to found an agency. We had a few ideas, one of which, the original idea, was something called Membo, which was a way to do the punch card rewards at your local coffee shop if you ever get those business cards. And we were like, we're going to digitize this process. That ultimately didn't go forward for a couple of reasons. One of which was there were other people in the space. The second of which is we tried to sell it first, which was smart. And coffee shops were like, nah, I just like the punch cards. Like, I think that they like the fact that people lose them and don't use them. So like, I think they like it. And so I don't think they like the idea of everybody getting their 10th cup free or whatever. No, I think that they just liked simpler things. It was just something that wasn't very sellable. We bailed on that. We went to another idea. We were going to be auctioning off experiences. Like, let's say you wanted to go surfing with Kelly Slater, for instance. And that's where the idea of Cause of a Kind came from, which was like one-of-a-kind experiences for causes. We were thinking that, people would donate their time and people would pay for that time and it would get donated to a cause. There was another competitor in the space called Omaze, and it once again didn't really pass validation, very difficult product, kind of a B2C kind of play. And then we were a t-shirt company for a brief period of time, which is why we have so much merch, because we did t-shirts and hats, and we were like, we don't want to do software anymore. We're going to try and do clothing. That's a really hard business. And then someone decided to pay us for a website, and we said, why are we fighting upstream here? I build software and websites, you do SEO and marketing. Let's just bring it together, build the agency, but we're not going to rename it because we didn't want to pay for a new name. And now the name precedes itself. So that's kind of the story there.
And I love that the brand represents that, because the brand that you exist as today in success it comes from one of those failing fast. Because when you fail fast, you're trying frequently. It's like a batting average in baseball. I mean, nowadays a threes is unheard of, but when 10 years ago, let's go 20 years ago, even 20 years ago, everybody at the All-Star game had a 320, 340, 350. That's incredible. Like 1 in 3 times you are succeeding, yet you are world class. That is what it's about. It's about being able to fail regularly to be able to find the success. Because if you're not trying on a regular basis, and this can be applied to the biggest brands, the smallest brands, building a brand, thinking about building a product. I'm over here thinking about making a book. I got to do something about it. I have to be willing to fail to be able to ever create success. So I love the fail fast mentality.
I also love waging war on the word fail. It's all just data. And so let's bring it back to like the ethos of your podcast, which is really about user experience, which is all about collecting data towards failing and figuring out what actually works and what is the best experience for the business, for the consumer, whatever your goal is. And so I wage war personally across my social media, and lots of times in my podcast, I really don't talk about the word failure. I talk about data collection. And so for us, it was really just about like, I've been friends with Mike since we're 15 years old. I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. This is as natural as it gets. Our relationship is as real as it gets. We're truly friends outside of this place. And so for us, this is just the journey. And we're gonna build and destroy and try new things constantly. And we're just like, we don't sit still on one thing ever. So I'm sure there's lots of people out there that relate to that. This is all about data collection and making the next move.
So let's talk about the culture shock of moving from enterprise level projects to the startup ecosystem. What are some of the key differences in how large corporations versus small businesses approach digital friction?
It's interesting because I don't know if it's a large or a small thing, because I've seen it happen across both. What I'd normally say is a lot of large businesses typically want to do a lot more of the big data collection, the A/B testing, the validation, a lot of that type of stuff, because they have the traffic to support it. The small businesses usually are looking to kind of build what they like. So it's usually like, hey, the founder likes this thing, and they try and kind of one shot it into existence. I don't want to say that's universal though, because I've seen that go the other way too. I've seen enterprises that don't do nearly enough testing. They're very like, it doesn't matter. All of our software looks like Craigslist right now. And if it looks just mildly better than that, we're fine. Like we just, they're almost like more cost conscious despite having more money. And sometimes the startup founder gets themselves into like a UX procrastination cycle. I've seen startup founders redesign their thing 3-4 times before we've even launched it. And we haven't gotten any data yet. We haven't even tried to show it to some. They like get like a cold feet aspect. So I don't want to say that it's universal. I think that there's sort of this impression the large business wants to test, the small doesn't. I think that it's just what they have available to them. The large business usually has the testing available, but usually they're a lot more budget conscious. The smaller startup founder is budget conscious, but they really want like I think they want the Porsche on the Toyota budget. Is kind of what ends up happening. But sometimes they don't realize that the Porsche doesn't perform how they think it's going to.
I think what's interesting about that is the non-technical individual looks at what has been made. So we hear all the time like, oh, DoorDash did it. Airbnb has this feature. You look at the applications that are really present in most people's lives, and the non-technical individual thinks it's trivial. Like, oh, if it exists, it should be easy to make. But what you don't see is a decade of R&D. What you don't see is a 100-person team that's had crazy turnover trying to find the right talent to build that thing that feels like magic. And so I love when those conversations come up, because it's an opportunity for us to talk about, you're building a tech company. You might have a little app idea. You might have a little bit of budget. But if this thing actually works, you're actually building a tech company, and you have to develop an empathy for the next thing that you decide to build. And so where do you catch the signals from the next thing to build? Is it look at incumbents like, oh, they built it, so we must too? Or is it really listening to your customer? Is it really listening to your investor or to yourself? And maybe you're departing from your original thesis. So it's all really kind of interesting that folks come to us and they say like, oh, I see this has been built already in the universe. It should only take you like a week, right? And so there's an empathy that we also have to work with. It's very much a coaching mentality too with the founders that come through our program, because we're teaching them how to be technologists, how to be tech leaders. And lots of them are not coming from those types of roles or backgrounds. So I love those conversations. For me personally, it's also just a way to kind of humanize this and create some empathy for the technologist that looks at a problem and says, that's going to take a while, or we're going to need more budget, or it's just not possible for your business, etc.
Yeah, seeing a lot of these brands as tech companies that aren't like, my example coming from Home Depot now, I look back at Home Depot, think it's a tech company. When I got the job offer, I wouldn't even pass that thought in my mind that Home Depot was a tech company. I would have thought, hey, they sell a bunch of hammers and wood, and I go there to repair things. I wouldn't think of them as building software. But actually, one of the really cool things, very early, first omni-channel brand to be fully cloud, Home Depot. And I was a part of that migration. And that platform, then Home Depot tried to turn around and sell it. Since has not been the way that vision worked out. But they tried to turn around and sell that as a GCP suite, with which was a omni-channel solution. And that was kind of my aha moment, that all of these brands that are building, big and small, they're not building a brand that's simply whatever their mission statement is. They're building a technology company. And that is what powers the ability to grow or, continue to provide friction to your customers. Either way.
Well, I was going to say, it's so funny you talk about the brand as the technology company. I think I'd love to dovetail too that as a technology company like us, you also have another aspect of it, which is like being a media company. And sometimes I say, even though we build a ton of software, I feel like there's all this tertiary activity that goes on around it. But ultimately, the founders that we see are most successful, the thing that I like to think about is they marry the problem but they date the solution. And so at any given time, they're willing to trash what we've done to kind of keep solving that problem, as opposed to getting hung up on this doesn't look like Apple. We're like, no, the people who have the problem you're trying to solve, they will use this even if it has the full Wikipedia treatment, because the problem should be so big that you got to get the function right first. And if you can solve that, the form can it's again, the classic form follows function, but they don't get too tied, because I think a lot of people get tied to sort of what they think UX means. Is it beautiful, or is it impressive, or is it, they don't really think about what sometimes great UX is, which great UX can be almost ugly, but clear. Like, oh, but I didn't think for 1 second, what does this button do? I've had founders say, I got to remove all the text. We need icons. But I'm like, but now it looks better on when I just look at it. If I wanted to hang your UI on my wall, but I don't know what to do here, especially on first look.
I have to say, you dogged Craigslist, but to me, Craigslist is an example I use all the time, as this is great UI UX without the lipstick on the pig. Because, how hard is it for you to find something on Craigslist?
Not.
Never hard.
Right.
It's even easy to advertise on there, which we've done.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
And it's about as cheap as you'd expect. So
it's great.
Lives up to its look.
It is such a great... The beautification part is not the UI UX. It's a marketing layer that is added on top to provide some type of message. That message, if you confuse it with the UI UX, you're getting it wrong, because that message matters. And Craigslist's message, they want to look like a newspaper. I get it. But that's not going to work for every brand. You can't just go and throw text on a web page and assume that you're going to be able to do whatever you're trying to do, obviously. So, but it's an important lesson that you're trying to meet your customers where they are and how they expect you to be. And if you add all of this bloat on top because your CMO said do all of these things, you might hit the mark with some of your customers, but you're going to isolate others.
The conversation that was a catalyst for this conversation, we were talking when we were on your podcast, and Nick and I work with really large brands, typically brands that have 10 million people or more coming to their website every month, or their mobile apps. And Nick was talking about A/B testing, and you guys said, well, how do you A/B test when you have no traffic, when you're a startup? And that kind of led to this conversation. And in the course that you talked about top 3 brilliant basics that every startup should get right. Talk about what those 3 brilliant basics are.
The brilliant basics have to do with playing the greatest hits. That's a Mike quote. As a smaller business that does not, you achieve your level of meaningful traffic. It doesn't just happen to you on day one. So if you're an emerging business, or you're like a mid-market enterprise or SMB or something like that, the goal is obviously to get to a larger scale of meaningful traffic so that when you do run certain tests, you have meaningful results. The brilliant basics have to do with, if you don't have those numbers, there are certain tried and true ways of building a web experience. So for example, if you're an e-commerce company, you probably shouldn't try to build a custom e-commerce solution the way that Apple did. You should probably just fire up a Shopify template, choose something beautiful, and don't deviate from that basic core template. If you're, a B2B business, you probably shouldn't try and go be Adobe. You should probably just fire up a Webflow, choose a beautiful template, and keep it simple. So the brilliant basics really have to do with kind of understanding and being realistic with where your business is at and where your customers need to be met. If you're trying to do something novel, if you're trying to make something that's totally fresh and new, great. But expect that you will not have meaningful data to tell you whether that thing that you created is valuable or not. It may work, it may not work. when you have 10 million users a month, you can try something novel and send traffic to that experience, and you'll get the data back to tell you whether that converts, whether that retains, whether that bounces, like whatever your metrics are that you're measuring. So to me, I go play the greatest hits until you have achieved a level of success and success means the metrics that you can use for valuable A/B testing when you're trying to innovate. It doesn't mean revenue, right? Like you might have very little traffic coming to your website and you could be $100 million brand. Kind of just depends on your industry and depends on your business. And so when we're helping businesses try to find their way, remember, we do a lot of greenfield. I'm doing a lot of mid-market. We've certainly had large scale enterprise businesses that have incredibly meaningful traffic. The irony of that is that there is typically at that scale actually less of a desire to do crazy A/B testing because the formula that they figured out works. So why break that formula? You can try little component testing. You could try maybe move a button around or something like that. But for the most part, the design system for businesses that are doing insane volume on the web, they keep that design system pretty much the same. That user is going to come back to a familiar experience time and time again. It's the same thing with native applications, same thing with like if you're in hardware or Internet of Things, like there are certain just core functions that you keep returning back to for familiarity, but you can test the tiny little components. For a small business, they want to test the whole landing page. And we just say that until you have achieved a meaningful amount of measurable traffic to try and test the whole landing page rather than just a tiny little button change, you don't know where in that page you might have a break in your metrics. And so we try to keep things as simple as possible for people. And the brilliant basics just mean become a master of your greatest hits that are available on the marketplace before you try and be a one of one.
I wanted to add to that too. Remember, a lot of our customers, especially as a startup, the primary concern is, does the world want this product? Not, are they going to go through my landing page? And I've said this many times. I have really never seen that like launch a landing page and collect email addresses. I've never seen that really work for most people, even for products that have been successful. That because most people don't have the audience. So unless they're going to pay for traffic, which is becoming increasingly more expensive to get quality traffic to that product, they're typically reaching out to people manually and they're bringing them into the product. And we want to talk to that one user about what it's like using this product. How did it feel? Did it solve your problem? Where was the friction? It's a lot less of like, there's 100,000 people using it. This is version A, this is version B, and we'll just like hit it with the average or some statistically significant amount of kind of signal. You're really taking signals at the individual level. You're getting a very intimate feel with people. You're usually watching them use the thing. So it is a much more manual process, especially if you're coming with no audience. There's a big move now with startup founders on X and on LinkedIn and other places where they're like, look, I'm making $100,000 a month and I got this thing, but they have this audience because they've been posting and they've been building it. Most founders don't have that. So they're actually kind of doing almost like they're doing a lot of manual outreach. Their first customers are coming in manually using it. And then we're seeing, does that person continue to use it after we stop holding their hand?
So, Nick, I think my favorite retailer and I need therapy.
You and another website?
I've waited 5 seconds for it to load. 5. I could have gone and brewed coffee.
That's a quick coffee maker, first of all, but that sounds like a performance issue to me.
Yeah, instead of communicating, it just spun.
So you left, I'm sure. Classic abandonment issue due to latency.
Exactly. And that's why the Lowe's SRE team built site speed targets with Blue Triangle, so their users don't get ghosted by loading icons.
This is 5 steps to faster pages and fewer heartbreaks, all in the context of improved experience and improved revenue.
In fact, we turned it into a free playbook.
It's like a couples therapy for your digital experience, for you and your website, Chuck.
So be sure to grab the 5-step site speed target playbook at bluetriangle.com/playbook.
Because love is patient, but users aren't. So how do you take that from like any level of non-measurement to measurement? Like when does it matter Because couldn't you at its most core understand the stages with which you move from one step to the next, to the next, to the next, and recognize that you have bottlenecks in certain spots based on seeing high exit rates or things like that? I get that this isn't traditional like A/B testing, but in reality, it's still basing it on data. I could do that on a small brand.
Yeah, you can. So there's a difference, because when we use the word small, there's the person who's starting at zero, and you really can't do that. They don't have anybody. And we have a lot of those. And then there's the people who get to a level. There's sort of another level of startup. And this is the far more common level for us as an agency, is they have an existing business that's great, and they're using a bunch of different products that really there's no point in A/B testing because they can't actually modify anything. They're using some kind of a SaaS solution to cobble together the business that they're building. They're building a business, but they're doing it very manually. And they're like, hey, now I'm ready for the software solution. Those are great for what you're talking about, because we build the solution. Now we're going to install something like, we install a bunch of monitoring tools. One of them that we used to use was called Hotjar. Now PostHog is kind of taking that place, I think, where we can actually watch user videos, and all those user videos come through, and we can actually see where the friction is. We could see if error rates are high here or drop-off rates are high here. So that's that next level. Those are typically small businesses, yes, but they're past validation phase, and they have a pretty healthy group of customers that are regularly using the product, versus the people who are like, all right, I'm truly at zero, and I need to like shepherd someone through this product. I need to like get one person to use this, or 10 people to use this.
And Nick, you said something interesting, which I just want to hinge on for a second, which is it's not necessarily about A/B testing. It can be, but sometimes, like if you just think about maybe like the onboarding flow for an application, we have a customer going through this right now. That onboarding flow, just in like your general Figma, you're catching feedback. It might be from your family, it might be from friends, it might be from investors, it might be just from your coworkers. And somebody is going to come out and say like, that feels like an extra step. Or like, I just want to like use Google Auth and get right into the application and start my very first thing. Versus like, what's your name? What's your age? How much do you weigh? What's your athletic background? Like that onboarding flow. Sometimes the data that you're looking for really doesn't have to do with A/B testing. It really has to do with, again, the brilliant basics. Get somebody into your product as fast as possible. And I love that when you come from an e-commerce mindset, that's the goal. Get somebody shopping, product in cart, checkout as fast as possible. And then you try to do the rest of the equation, which is like add something additional to the cart or comparable products that people buy most frequently in combination with this product. Then you try to get a little bit creative. But the brilliant basics really have to do with what is the least amount of things that you need to do to get somebody to the goal. So if the goal is onboard and make your first thing, could be your first entry, could be your first log, it could be like whatever your first action item is. How fast can I get a person into that mode? And then do I collect that data later?
Well, figuring out what that action item is a challenge too. Like Facebook has that famous stat that if you connect with 7 people or something like that within the first couple of days, we kind of look for that for every customer. For our agency, we know what that is. If we can shorten the time to someone's first dollar, they are more likely to stick with us for years. So the quicker a startup makes its first dollar from the software, the longer or the better chance that they're going to be with us for 2-3 years. So we always say, how do we get this person to their first dollar faster? And that's where that challenge comes in, where we talked about where like a founder will be like redesigning and kind of almost getting cold feet and finding new features and procrastinating. And inside we know, hey, you're going to be more successful because our startups that are successful tend to stay with us if we get you a customer quickly. So we're always looking at that metric, but that kind of cascades right over to them, which is what's the metric in your app that if we get a user there and they perform it a certain number of times, that they're going to stick around. And startups at zero don't know that. And then other, startups that are later on have validated that. It's a much easier experience to modify what Justin's talking about, which is getting them into that place quicker.
Yeah, I also like talking about successful journeys that aren't the expected journey. And I think this is what most e-commerce businesses get wrong, is they assume there's only one successful way for someone to use their platform, which is just holistically wrong. I'm not always ready to buy. I'm not always going to go to a website with the intention to buy, but I could still achieve what I'm trying to achieve, which is discovery. I mean, just the same way any business takes some time for you to feel that you're confident and ready to spend, you need to have the ability to have those successful journeys. So when you talk about really high exit rate on the product page, oh, our exit rate's ridiculous. Well, it's a good thing people are looking at our products. That's a successful journey. You got somebody to a product. Now, did you get them into the right product? How do we measure that? How do we figure that out? These are, big data complications, obviously, but being able to take the insight and go from non-profound to profound is recognizing all of the different ways someone can successfully use your brand. And until you've recognized how to do that and measure it, you're going to continue to miss the mark on everything but your whatever you've decided is a successful journey. So conversion obsession, frankly, I love conversion, clearly, but if conversion is the only thing you're focusing on, you're going to miss the majority of your customers, because the majority of your customers are not there to try to convert. A healthy conversion rate, 2%, 3%, 4% is incredible. 10% are for brands with which have a very dedicated offering or whatever. But when you're thinking about it from the standpoint of how do I create successful journeys that are not my main goal, now you're building a brand, now you're building loyalty, now you're building customers for life. And a concept that's come up in our podcast several times is don't confuse a recurring visit, even a recurring purchase, with loyalty and trust. Just because somebody's buying with you doesn't mean they love you. And that's part of what you need to get right, is all those other aspects so that you can continue to do that. I mean, who absolutely loves, let's say, the internet that they're provided? Who just loves it? You just love it.
Yesterday.
They kind of have a gun to my head. No.
Exactly.
No.
You
Right.
have no choice. But how do I improve that experience to make you love it? And honestly, I had my internet go down for like 3 days last week. So this is why I bring it up. But I kept on telling people, you know what? It's the best in class for what I have available to me. And I've gone 10 years without problems like this. This is the first time I've had recurring issues. And it was the same exact outage map, and it was tiny. And they said 62 people were impacted, and I happen to be one of 62. So they're working on it, but they don't care that much. Like if it was 62,000, this would have been fixed in 30 minutes. But it's those level of things. How do you make sure that journey? Now, was I going there to buy more internet? No, but I was recurrently going to their website to try to figure out what was going wrong with the internet. I was constantly hitting that outage map. So if they're not measuring that I'm going there to look for my outage map and making sure that with my internet down, that experience is good. If they're measuring that is a win. I can just about guarantee you they're not measuring it. But that is what you need to be thinking about. How do you recurringly measure those aspects that are not my core conversion?
I was going to say Home Depot is interesting because I feel like I've used that website to navigate the store. Like I'm looking for a thing and I'm like, I need the bit. So of course I'm leaving your product page. I'm not converting, but I did convert in the store, and you may not be able to tie that together, or maybe you can, and I just don't realize it. I'm sure that you can.
You do, first of all. Second of all, what I love about that example, very, very personal. Like we had these escalations, executives, as high as it goes, saying, why is mobile conversion so much lower than desktop conversion? We need to go figure this out. Mobile conversion is miserable and we need to go fix it. You have a tiny conversion over here and it's 3 times better on desktop. Why is that? Well, it's simple. I can't bring my desktop to the store and augment my store experience. And the moment everyone had a little aha, everyone was just blindly pursuing conversion. This is exactly the perfect example of what I was talking about, because it was conversion, and it stopped there. And elevating to understand there's an incredibly successful journey that is using the mobile app or the mobile website even, while in a Home Depot store, and you start measuring that as success. How do I figure out how many sessions exist on my mobile app that are in the store? Now, all of a sudden you take it and you're able to isolate either that segment out of your data, then recalculate conversion, or you just simply start understanding that is the core customer that I care about the most. And that is in its purest, the most successful journey I can have. Somebody uses my mobile app to augment their experience and have a better in-store experience. They're never going to step inside of Lowe's. They're going to simply keep going back to Home Depot as long as they're continuously using that behavior. So love that example.
The hard part is the attribution, right? Like I think attributing that visitor and that experience to they purchase something in the store, the attribution of that is hard. And you asked the question, Nick, of like, how do we coach our customers through this? There's a maturation journey that happens here. Like certain businesses are just not mature enough and have not had enough customer experience to take advantage of some of the things we're talking about. But I focus customers from an analytics perspective and what they should measure. How long are people maintaining their session on the site? How many pages are they consuming in the site? It's not only necessarily just a matter of, are they purchasing something, or did they submit a form, or did you generate a lead? Lots of that buyer's journey really has to do with information discovery. It has to do with comparing a product or a service to another competitor. And so this is really about measuring the finer parts. It's not always about attribution. It's one of the hardest things that we have to measure, especially for a smaller company. The big question comes to, what are the goals? And so is the goal higher conversion from the cart? Is the goal to just maintain users on your site and then track where they're going? Are you tracking search? Like how much on-site search is occurring? Like what is the goal? And you get super granular with the goals. And so this comes back to the brilliant basics. For a smaller company that's trying to find their way, you probably shouldn't be measuring the tiny nuances because you might not have the meaningful data. What you should be measuring is, how long is somebody maintaining their session on the site? What is the click path or the journey that they're going through the site? Are they finding their way to a piece of information, and where does that journey end? Do I have a place where they end their journey where there isn't a call to action? Blogs are famous for this. Are they finding the information they need, but I'm not serving them anything to do from there? And so these are the tiny little things that brands can do. Even big brands fail at this. I mean, I spent my career as a professional SEO with the largest brands in the world, one of them being Home Depot, as you know. The tiny little things that can gain you incredible throughput, a lot of big brands miss. They're either overlooked, or there was a migration that occurred and something didn't come over, or whatever. 1,000 different ways to die as a big brand. So for a little brand, you're emerging, and the tiny little basics will carry on with you, and that data compounds over years and decades. And so I love the contrast, because I've played in both arenas before. I've seen the large enterprise businesses that just have so much low hanging fruit and nobody to say, hey, execute on that one little thing. I've also seen the small little businesses with operators that come from enterprise, and they expect more on day one than is even possible. And so my goal is to create a realistic path. And so what are the things that people should focus on? And again, there's a maturation there. I got to meet people where they are in their life cycle.
So with every founder out there vibe coding at night and being able to use all these AI tools, why do they come to an agency like you? Why would they come and have you guys build their product? And is that an uphill battle you're starting to encounter?
No, I think the reverse. I think that vibe coding has made more people interested in software than ever before. So we're seeing an uptick. And what's happening is people will usually go to Replit or Lovable, and they'll build a prototype, and they'll quickly realize, I can't finish it. Like, I love the way this looks, but how do I put a subscription on this? How do I get, and even if I did, how can it even handle the traffic? Or there's some kind of like a security concern, and they know about it. They're like, I wanted to sell this to hospitals, and they're never no hospital's going to buy a piece of software that you built on Replit. You know, like that. Let's just get realistic here for a second, you know? And so we've seen all of this come our way now. And so I love this, because now every founder can kind of do their Squarespace version, you know, what Squarespace was, or Weebly, or one of these, like, of their software. And then they're like, okay, now I need a pro to take this thing over the line. And a lot of times we're using AI tools and vibing just as much, but it's not like like I can rebuild what they've built from the spec. Usually I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. We could take this and we can build it proper, put it on some proper hosting that can scale without the cost being out of control, and make it so that you can actually begin to take a stab at being a tech company. So this is one of the side effects, I think, of it, is that vibe coding is great. Most people who have for most people, the internet works by magic. They put a piece of text in the URL bar, they hit the enter key, they have no idea. They just know a thing shows up on the screen. And so they're vibe coding and the thing is showing up on the screen and they're like, okay, well, I do not even have the knowledge. Like there are people you say you got to host it. They're like, what's that? They don't realize that like the internet is a network of servers. Like, so we have to realize how incredible the internet has been in that it's abstracted away needing to know basically anything about technology. How great your MacBook is that you basically open it and it just works and you don't have to do anything. And Replit is sort of giving people this ability to dream in real time. And now they're like, I actually want to execute it. So it's the ultimate sales tool for us in reality.
So guys, what's one widely held belief about frictionless digital experiences that you think people get wrong, that you fundamentally disagree with?
I have seen good money after good money get thrown at problems without the discipline to know when something is not going to work. And this can be for mature businesses. This can be for brand new ventures. It happens a lot where folks are trying to do something out of their depth, try a new thing. Everybody wants during their job to like put their pin in, I did that. You know, a lot of people have budget, especially if you're in an enterprise sector. A lot of people have budget that they have to deploy or lose it. And then you also see like the small little startups that you're using other people's money, or you leverage your home, or like you believe blindly in the thing that you're building. The discipline of building not only a piece of software, but just building a business in general, that's an acquired talent. Assume you know nothing. Assume that every turn is trying to kill your business and kill your dream. And so for me, I find that the idea of being frictionless is doing the least amount that you possibly can to catch your signal. For our business and the customers that we really attract, it's what is the least amount of software that I can build that gets you to your first goal, which is typically revenue, first user, first dollar. And so I give that nugget away for anybody, wherever you are in your journey, even if you're large scale enterprise. What is the least amount of impact that I can have to the greater system to get to the milestone? And so that milestone can be 1,000 different things. But for me, I find that people think it's a cash equation. Let's just keep throwing money at this. I'm guilty. Let's just keep throwing money at ads, despite it never converting to a single lead. Let's just like keep building this product because we believe it's going to work, but we cannot find a customer for it. And so I think that discipline, creating a frictionless experience, to me, of course, we could keep it right on brand and talk about, you know, a website's user experience or something like that. For me, it's the discipline as an entrepreneur to know where to deploy energy and capital, where to build a business versus just a side project, or maybe this is a little thing that's just never going to see the light of day. That's an acquired skill. You know, it's taken Mike and I a decade and tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars in failures, mentorship and coaching, like just peer groups, trying to figure out our way to limit the mistakes that we make. So when I think about my own frictionless experience, I look forward to the next business that we build because it's compounded on all of that experience going forward. And I'm sure I could have taken that a million different directions, but for me, it's deploy your resources as frugally as possible, and always kind of focus on like, what is the minimum thing that I need, minimum dollar, minimum software surface area, whatever. What is the minimum thing that I need to achieve my milestone?
Mine's a little different. Mine is really that features are friction, and that the biggest mistake I see founders make is they think that there's a lot of needed features in their initial product. And I'm very guilty, especially with AI driven development. It's so easy to just give them that now, because what Justin talks about is those days are over where there's like a massive financial constraint. I can pretty much give you almost anything you want kind of in under 6 weeks these days. Like realistically, it's never been faster for me to deploy more features for your product that you think are absolutely necessary. But I've never seen a single feature turn the needle on a product that didn't really get down to do one thing and do one thing really well. And so I always say those features become friction because they also start to become confusing for everything else. Now we got to build your landing page and we tell you you need a brilliant basic, a call to action, a story, a one-liner that tells everybody what your product does. But now it does 10 things. And so what of those 10 things do you put above the fold? Then you got to try and blend it in the right way, or you create lots of different user flows and you're not really sure which one is successful because you're not able to figure that out. So it's not that your product may not grow. All products grow to become, let's say you're really successful, you'll turn into Salesforce eventually, plenty of time to do that. And then nobody will know what you do, but nobody knows what you do and everybody knows what you do. At that point, you can be a feature factory and acquire companies. But at the very beginning, features are friction. It's not just friction for your users. It's friction for your marketing. It's friction for your story. It's friction for your elevator pitch. It starts to stand in the way. So really think about what the one problem is and how to solve that one problem really, really well.
Awesome. So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to find you?
We have both personal and professional platforms. We're causeofakind.com, at causeofakind across all channels. We're on every possible social media channel. We run the Strictly From Nowhere podcast. We feature founders and their journeys from zero to market, entrepreneurs and operators, and the trials and tribulations that they've been through along the way. We also run the stand-up, which is Mike and I record a daily session of us building in public and all the shit that we just go through in our daily life as partners and friends and building a business together. Personally, I'm at Cousin Justin across all platforms, CUZZIN Justin across platforms. Mike has a couple of different handles, but I think LinkedIn is probably your jam. What would you say?
Yeah, LinkedIn or X, those are both kind of the place where you can reach me professionally.
Excellent. Well, thank you for tuning into the Frictionless Experience. Be sure to check out future episodes and visit thefrictionlessexperience.com to sign up for our newsletter so that you don't miss the insights that we take out of these episodes and go a little bit deeper. And you can always reach me and Nick on LinkedIn. I am at Chuck Moxley.
And I'm at In Paladino.